said at this point is there is something out there that permeates everything that's not in flux. And that thing he called the Logos. Now, for Heraclitus, as well as for other Greek philosophers like the Stoics, who also talked about the Logos, this thing was not conceived of as a person, nor was it understood to be unique in the sense of being altogether different from reality. I mean, it's kind of hard to even talk about this because it's not a finally coherent theory, but in the Greek system, everything was part of the same continuum. So there's no conception of absolute creation. So it's not as if there was a time when the world was not, even that, of course, we're stretching language here, a time when the world was not. Time is a property of created reality. But Heraclitus didn't think that there was a time when the word existed sans creation, that is, apart from creation. It's all just part of this eternal reality. The only difference between the Logos and material things is that the Logos is a principle that is unchanging and it permeates everything. So it is coeval or coexistent with everything, but it's distinguished from them in that it doesn't change. Okay, so what a number of critics of Christianity, a number of liberals, and even sadly some Christians who were too ready to accept these things from the hands of unbelievers, thinking that they scoped this out right. The fact is, when you look at John's gospel, it's clear that for John, when he uses the term Logos, even apart from looking elsewhere to find out where John got this idea, it's clear that John has a profoundly different idea in view. For John, the word is a person. This is why I marvel when I hear Unitarians, and you've all heard it, they say that the Christian concept of Christ is God's personal word and this kind of thing. They say we're getting this stuff from pagan philosophers. And I think to myself, have you not read any pagan philosophers? What you're saying is precisely what pagan philosophers said. The word is impersonal and part of the continuum of reality and so forth. No, but when you go to John really is saying something decidedly different from the Greeks. For John, the word is a person. In the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, proston theon, or theon. It's a language, or it's words that are used to indicate personal relationship. You don't speak this way of an abstraction being with a person. You don't speak, some Unitarians will say that the word just refers to something that's in the mind of God. It's a plan in God's mind. But John doesn't say this is something in the mind of God. He says the word was with God. This is the way you talk about one person being with another person. Moreover, John goes on to say, the same was in the beginning with God. But in Greek, it's hutos, this one, he was in the beginning with God. And all throughout the context, the personhood of the word is pointed up. Moreover, the word is identified as eternal in distinction from all other reality. All extra-deical reality, that's an old way of saying all reality other than God, everything besides God or outside of God, all extra-deical reality, according to John, is temporal and created. Temporal and created. So for John, the word is eternal and in contrast to all other reality, and the word is a person. Moreover, the word is the source of reality. In pagan thought, the word, the Logos, is not the source of things, at least not in terms of their matter. The word can be attributed to forming things, but it's forming pre-existing matter at best. So John is out of step with pagan philosophers. Unitarians and others are walking in lockstep with them to the extent that they depersonalize the word or in any way reduce the word to something other than a person who is distinctly eternal, distinct from creation, and the source of creation. Okay, but where did John get that idea of Jesus as the Word? He's not getting at least the concept from the Greeks. This is not a Greek concept that John is talking about. When you go to the Old Testament, first of all, you have the concept all throughout the Old Testament of a distinct divine person who has always been with the Father. But more than that, you also have the very language that John uses. In Genesis 15, it says the word of the Lord appeared to Abraham. identifying the word as a person who can appear and who can speak. The word of the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him. And that same word took Abram outside. So this isn't a mere vision. The word is there. The word is seen. The word is heard. This sort of thing happens throughout the Old Testament. And this is why in ancient Judaism, it was very common in their interpretive works to use a cognomen for these various episodes that feature a distinct divine person. So any episode that involves a person appearing and speaking who is distinct from another, and yet both are identified as God, then in the Jewish way of talking, they would say this is the word. So for example, Genesis 19:24 says, the Lord rained fire and brimstone upon Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of heaven. Notice the Lord rained from the Lord who was on earth, speaking to Abram, who went down into Sodom. It says the Lord who was on earth rained from the Lord who is in heaven. When the Targum renders this into Aramaic, it says the word of the Lord rained fire and brimstone upon Sodom and Gomorrah from heaven. Okay, so the point of this is simply to illustrate the ever popular but false or wrong approach that many people have. The assumption is if the gospel writers say something and we don't want it to have its home in Judaism for various reasons, well, then we look for something outside of that context in the pagan world, in the world of the philosophers, the world of first century religion, in order to account for where this comes from. Well, the same thing is true